Hey guys, my name is Jim, coming at you live from the Intrepid Sea, Air, and Space Museum located in the heart of Hell's Kitchen in Midtown Manhattan in New York City. This is another Intrepid Adventures live and free program. And if you'd like to keep this free programming flowing, please consider supporting us by clicking the link in the chat down to the lower right. Also, while you're at it, please feel free to say hi. Tell us where you're tuning in from, if you've ever been to the Intrepid, and just say hi overall in the chat as well. Now, let's get one thing out of the way. I know what you might be saying. Who's this guy and where's Alicia? Well, don't worry. Alicia's still here. She's working behind the scenes, so all is still good. Guys, today's program is called Jobs on Deck, and we're going to be taking a look at Intrepid's long history, specifically some of the things that the men on board had to do. But first, a little bit about the Intrepid. Let's get that started. There is the Intrepid, guys, as it looks today. Do me a favor if you can, and just show me or tell me in the chat what kind of ship you think this is or was. Maybe you think it was a submarine. It doesn't really look like it went under the water to me. Maybe you think it was a warship. That would actually be correct. It is a warship, but what kind of ship do you think it actually was? Please share in the chat and tell me what kind of ship you think that ship was when it was in service. Yeah, let's give you a little bit better view. Guys, if you said, or if you were about to write aircraft carrier, you are correct. Before the Intrepid became a museum, it was an aircraft carrier, okay? And that may give you a hint, given our title here today, Jobs on Deck. That may give you a hint as to what some of the jobs that the men on board had to do, okay? Let's talk a little bit about the Intrepid. The Intrepid was commissioned on August 16th, 1943. That makes the Intrepid about to turn 78 years old. 78 years old, yeah, I think I got that math right. That is almost as old as I am, folks. I'm not quite there. Okay. Intrepid enjoyed service in kind of 3 wars. The picture that you're looking at right here was from its service in World War II. The Intrepid also served in the Cold War, and a symptom of the Cold War was the space race too. We're going to touch upon that a little bit towards the end of this presentation. The Intrepid also served in the Vietnam War as well, okay? The Intrepid served for 31 proud long years, was decommissioned in 1974. It opened up as the museum, as you saw it in that first picture, in 1982. Going quickly back to that first picture, because you can get a better view. It's in color. It's more like it looks today, okay? Do you think the Intrepid is big? Do you think it's small? What do you guys think about that? Tell me in the chat just what you guys notice about this picture right here. What are you noticing? What colors? What structures? How big you think it is? Aircraft carriers today, you do think they're bigger than what Intrepid was? If you said yes to that last question, you are absolutely correct. Aircraft carriers today are bigger than what you see here, but at the time, the Intrepid was 3rd in the line of the Essex class of aircraft carriers, and it was big. It was bigger than most things out there at the time. At the time of World War II, the Intrepid was 845 feet long. It was modified in the mid-50s to be 913 feet long. That's pretty long. In fact, if you were to stand Intrepid on end, it would be almost as tall as the Chrysler Building, another popular attraction here in Manhattan, which is about 1,042 feet long. So it's definitely skyscraper territory that we're talking about here, right? As you see it here, sitting more to the Pier 86, and as you see it here in service in the ocean, It's about 8 stories tall. Okay, so still pretty tall sitting on its bottom. My next question, guys, why do you think we need an aircraft carrier? Looking at this picture may give you a hint why, but why do you think we need, or today, but especially back then in World War II, in Vietnam, why did we need aircraft carriers? Just say hello in the chat. Let me know what you're thinking. Take a little hint by what you see there on top. If you were guessing we needed to carry aircraft, well, that's great. And keeping things simple is often the best way to go when answering questions, especially on these broadcasts, guys. Very good. So by carrying aircraft. Now, these aircraft and military aircraft used today, most of them, we do have some that can fly clear across oceans, but most of the ones that are actually useful to us in reconnaissance, in combat, did not have that kind of range. So the aircraft carrier simply gave us a floating airport. Okay, you needed someplace to land, you needed someplace to get refueled, and all of these we're going to be talking about in a little bit when we get to the talking about the jobs. Okay. So, guys, one of the ways of looking at ships like the Intrepid is as a city at sea. We talked a little bit about floating airport. Let's talk a little bit more about it as a city at sea. I want you guys to think about the neighborhoods that you guys live in when you leave the house every day on your way back from work or from school. What are some of the things you see? What are some of the things that you notice? Some things that maybe you've forgotten about because you see them all the time. That happens to me in my neighborhood. You just don't recognize them anymore. You see them so much. What are some of the things that you see every day? I know some of you are probably thinking, I see trees and I see grass. Two things. One, good luck and good on you that you actually see trees and grass if you live in New York City. Those can be hard to come by, but I'm talking more about the places and the buildings that you see. Do you see restaurants? Do you see doctor's offices? Do you see hair salons? Do you see things like that? The answer is, of course, yes. I see these in my neighborhood as well. A good way of looking at the Intrepid as a city at sea is to check out our chair exhibit. That's what you're looking at here. Okay. Now you may say, chairs. Wow, how boring. It is a good way of starting to look at these different jobs. Okay, take a look at these different chairs here. Right. Take a look at that one right there. What do you think that chair was used for? See the arrow pointing to the one on the right. The green one kind of looks like the smallest chair there. What do you think that chair was all about? Give me an idea in the chat. Any ideas? Is it heavy? Is it light? You might be getting the idea that it's light. That is absolutely by design on an aircraft carrier, a ship of any type that was very, very heavy. You want to save weight where you possibly can. And one of those places you may not think about, but was the furniture on board, the furniture. So it's the lightest chair of all those that you see. This chair might be used, say, in an office. Yeah, because some of the things, remember, walking around your neighborhood, you're going to see some offices. We had offices on board Intrepid and clerks that worked in those offices, administrative assistants as well, called secretaries back then. I say piano chair. Yes, this green chair is a simple office chair, and it was the most common type of chair on board, right? Very good. Looking at some of the other things here. What about that chair? Okay, kind of a double chair. See that one with the arrow overhead? Does that chair look comfortable? What do you think it was used for? Also put it in the chat. Do you think it was used by office workers? You think it was used by the barbershop? Just give me an idea in the chat what you think that chair might be used for. I'll give you a couple more seconds. This chair was actually used. Now, remember, we're talking about an aircraft carrier. So, of course, the majority of the jobs on board are going to have to do with around the aircraft operations. Okay, there is no other reason for an aircraft carrier to exist rather than air operations. Okay, and the airplane. So most of those jobs are going to be centered around that as well. Yep, pilot ready room chair. That's exactly what that chair was all about. And here are your pilots. This is Air Group 6. Okay, this is the first permanent air group that came on board Intrepid when it arrived at Pearl Harbor on January 5th, 1944. Now, these guys, of course, one of the jobs on board, the pilots, they kind of look ready to do what they need to do, right? They really don't look scared at all. Their commander would stand up in front of these guys and talk about the mission that they're about to go on, right, and get them ready. These things had little spaces underneath the chair where they could keep personal items and some equipment. If you're looking kind of on the side there, you can kind of see they have desks that kind of fold up. Some of you who are taking classes may have those same desks that you can fold up into place so you can write on them, because they will be taking notes on the mission that they're about to do. But if it looks like they're kind of all dressed up to jump into the cockpits of their aircraft, that's exactly right. This is the last stop. The next stop after the pilot's ready room will be into the cockpits of their planes. Okay. Let's go back to our chairs exhibit here and talk about a couple of the other type of chairs. How about this chair? Okay, this chair here, the kind of the second from the right there, it looks like the biggest chair. Looks like it may be the heaviest chair. What do you think that chair was all about? What was that chair used for? If you think it's the strangest looking chair, it absolutely is to me anyway. It's the most common comment we get on the chair exhibit. What is that all about? Yeah, piano chair, piano chen, I'm sorry. Yeah, you got it right again. Absolutely, fantastic. Those were chairs for pilots before, but what about this chair? Is this chair a chair for the pilots as well? Guys, if you thought, or if you were about to write down that this is an ejection chair or an ejection seat, you are absolutely correct. Check out this guy, he's ejecting. Now remember, one of the most prestigious jobs on board the aircraft carrier, especially even today, is to be a pilot or to be a crew member of the airplane. Because guys, not all crew members on an airplane that flew are pilots. Okay, and we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. If you're in war, even if you're not flying during time of war, just like when you're driving around in your car, right? Maybe you're driving with your parents, maybe they're driving you to school. Sometimes cars break down. You might get a flat tire. Sometimes something might happen that you can't drive that car anymore. It breaks down. Well, planes being machines, aircraft being machines, they're going to break down as well from time to time. And sometimes if they break down, you're not going to be able to make it back to the ship to land. Okay, so what you'll do as a pilot, and you can see there are two crew members. Here's one that's sitting in the front, and the other one is using his ejection seat. They'll radio back to the Intrepid so that they'll make sure that they know that there's something wrong and they're not going to be making it back. And instead of just going down in a crash, what you're going to do, and let me go back to that ejection seat right there. You might notice on the top of the chair, there's a, let's see if I can get you a better view there. Can't really see, it's a yellow and black striped handle. So what you're going to do, it certainly does look strange. If you're in trouble, you're going to reach up and you're going to, let me get myself back in the picture. You're going to pull down that handle, or you might see one that will be between the pilot's legs, pardon me, between the pilot's legs as well. You're going to pull up on that handle. And that will set off the ejection seat. Okay. Going back to our pilot. That's going to set off a two-stage rocket on the back of that chair, guys. Two-stage rocket. That's right. You're going to be rocketed out of the cockpit. But before that rocket takes hold, hopefully, you're going to have explosive charges that are going to be set off around that cockpit. You see that glass on the top there above the pilot and what would be the gunner or the navigator's head? That's supposed to blow out of your way so that you can rocket through without any resistance. But take a close look at this picture. Does that look to you like that happened? Look at this debris that's around him. It doesn't really look like that came out of the way, blew out of the way, does it? It happens still today. But look what he's wearing. You might see a blue helmet on his head. Okay, it's a good thing he's wearing a very hard helmet, because if that doesn't blow out of your way, you're going to go right through that glass. And it looks like that's what this guy's doing right there. And by the way, being rocketed out of that chair is going to subject you to many G forces. Okay, it's going to put a lot of stress on your spine. But again, better than of course going down in a crash. The seat part is going to fall away. If it doesn't on its own, there's a button that you press, the seat will fall away, the parachute will automatically open up, and you'll drift gently down to the ocean, hopefully gently down to the ocean, okay? Let's take a look at our next chair. Look at this over here. It's the last one on the left. That's maybe the strangest looking chair. To me, it certainly was. Looks kind of like a little cage. Guys, tell me in the chat what you think that looks like. What do you think what the purpose of that chair was all about? Sometimes it doesn't even look like a chair to some people. Yeah, piano, it does look strange, as a lot of these chairs do. It's painted white. Why do you think it was painted white? Believe me, the Navy does nothing by accident or a mistake. Everything has a purpose to it, as does the whole military. So it was painted white for a reason. Here's a hint. It has a lot to do with the moving hanging chair. Piano, you got it just about right again, okay? I want you to imagine yourselves as that pilot who ejected from the cockpit. You have floated down via your parachute to the ocean, and you're in the ocean, but don't worry, you have a life vest that's going to keep you afloat. And hopefully you radioed ahead so that the Intrepid knows where you are. But the Intrepid is too big and too important to stop what it's doing, especially if it's in the middle of war operations, to come back and get you. So it will be up to a smaller ship, a destroyer. Back in World War II, we had destroyer escorts, which were even smaller than destroyers today. They're going to pull up alongside. They'll probably roll down a rope ladder for you to climb up, and you'll climb up to the deck of the destroyer, okay? And the guys will all make sure that you're okay. And the communications from the destroyer will be to the Intrepid. Hey, we have your pilot, Lieutenant X. And the Intrepid will say, very good, come alongside. So it'll be up to that destroyer to pull alongside the Intrepid. And then the crew on board that destroyer will fire over via modified shotguns, cables to the deck of the Intrepid. And the Intrepid will tie off those cables, and they will shoot over that chair, which is called the highline chair. The highline chair, okay? And that is where the crew of on the destroyer will take it, and they'll put the pilot in there and zip you over to the Intrepid. But hey, not so fast. Remember, aircraft carriers are cities at sea. Remember all the things that they have. The destroyers generally won't have any of those things. Yeah, they'll have eating facilities, of course. Won't be anywhere near what aircraft carriers have, and the Navy has really good food anyway. So maybe they will hold your Lieutenant X ransom, and they'll say, listen, Intrepid, before we give him back to you, I want you to take that highline chair, and you see the piece at the bottom there, that little basket area. I want you to fill that with Lieutenant X's weight in ice cream. Because yes, we had ice cream parlors, not one. We had 2 ice cream parlors here in Intrepid. That's 2. So the crew on Intrepid, being used to all this stuff, will say, yeah, sure, we're used to it. We'll put a lot of ice cream in the basket, don't worry. And they zip the highline chair over to the destroyer. But still, not so fast. The crew on a destroyer might say, okay, Lieutenant X, taste that ice cream. Because in the past, things have been done like the crew on board Intrepid might shave soap shavings into that ice cream. They might pour hot sauce into that ice cream. Things to kind of say, okay, you want ice cream? You didn't say how you wanted the ice cream. So we're going to give you what we want to give you. And the crew on the destroyer knows this, so they're going to take Lieutenant X, taste that ice cream. And if Lieutenant X can take a taste of that ice cream and it tastes good, or at least if he can pretend it tastes good, into that chair he goes. And they're going to zip that Highline chair over to the Intrepid. Okay, here you see a picture of that being done, the destroyer on the right, and it would be a larger ship, such as an aircraft carrier to the left. Okay, it's like going on a zip line. If you've ever ridden a zip line, which is one of the things I want to do. Okay, I haven't done that yet, but it's one of the things I want to do. It kind of looks fun. But keep in mind, as Lieutenant X is being zipped over to the Intrepid, there is a distinct possibility that he may be dunked at least once into the ocean, either accidentally or on purpose by the crew of the destroyer before he gets to the Intrepid. Okay, all in good fun, though. All in good fun. Moving on to our next chair, folks. This is the last one here. You see the arrow there pointing down to that chair. Kind of a weird-looking chair there. To me, people have said looks like a robot. What do you think that chair is? What do you think that chair is all about? If you're a Disney fan, maybe it looks like Wall-E. It certainly looks like it has like a little head up on top. What do you think that is all about? Oh, by the way, yeah, Piano Chen, excellent. You're a good student. You got things right. It is painted white so that it is easy to see. So some of those pilots may be transferred over at night. Okay, so there you go. You get the gold star, and you also get another gold star for this chair as well. It is a dentist chair. Remember some of the things you'll see in your neighborhood. Some of the things you go to. You go to the dentist. Okay. So we had not one but two dentists here on Intrepid during World War II anyway. As it just gets darker in my room, I'm going to turn on some light so that you can see me a little bit better. There you go. Thunderstorms in the area. Okay, a dentist chair. Some people, yours truly included, might consider this the scariest chair up there as well. I don't know, I got a little thing about dentists. If there's any dentists out there, no offense. Please don't take offense to that. Another common answer as to why, as to what that chair was all about, maybe a barber's chair. Yeah. Remember you're seeing hair salons and barbers in your neighborhood? We had them here on Intrepid as well. Very important to keep that hair trimmed to Navy regulations, okay? Because you're out for as much as 9, maybe even longer, 9 months plus during World War II. Today you're out for a general 6-month deployment, okay? So you definitely needed those barbers. Those barbers were very, very important. Okay, guys, I'm going to take our first question break here and see if we have any questions. So if we have any questions, oh, we have a question. How many people served on Intrepid? Excellent, okay. So during World War II, the Intrepid had 3,400 sailors on board, okay, approximately. That number did not include the Marines that were on board as well. And speaking of jobs, the Marine jobs on aircraft carriers, especially back in World War II, included firing the anti-aircraft guns, okay, making sure that the Intrepid was safe from enemy attack, and also to keep security, general security on the ship. For example, if you are a sailor and you cause some trouble, you might be tapped on the shoulder by a Marine who will take you and put you downstairs below decks in the brig. Okay, brig is naval term for the jail on board Intrepid. Later on in the Vietnam era, about 60, 65 or so Marines, and the crew was reduced. You got it again, Piano Chen, to 3,200 during the Vietnam War. Okay, it also, guys, did not include the men of the air groups, air wing today in World War II, air groups. Okay, so it was actually a little bit closer to 4,000 men on board. Excellent question. Do we have another one? Here's another one. What other common jobs you can find in Intrepid? Okay, so let me see. Just thinking about me walking around my neighborhood, you might see, oh, you might have a church. Okay, you might have a multi-denominational or interfaith chapel. Those were common on board Navy ships. So you'll have a chaplain, at least one chaplain on board. Usually a bit of a higher rank, but a rank of a lieutenant commander. Some other common jobs you might have, you might see office workers, let's see, drawing a blank. Oh, shoe polishers, okay? On Intrepid, there was a shoe polish room, okay? Now you may be thinking shoes, man, if something goes wrong with my shoe, I just throw it out and I order another pair, right? Well, that's what we probably will do today. But in the Navy, even today, if you're out for 6 months and you kind of mess up your shoes, remember, part of the Navy discipline, you want those shoes to be shiny and to military regulations, up to spec, we call it, okay? So you're going to go to the shoe polish room and make sure that's polished. They even did shoe repairs as well. So there was cobblers on board as well. Let's see some of the other. We had a radio station here on board Intrepid as well. We had a newsletter. So there were people, sailors who wrote for the newsletter. We had a post office. You might see a post office in your neighborhood. We had a post office. So there'd be post office clerks working there. As you might expect, very popular, the post office on the ship. It was always great to receive letters from your family and loved ones at home, and not just letters, but it was always great to receive things like freshly baked cookies, maybe not so fresh by the time you get them, but freshly baked cookies from your mom. Who wouldn't love that? Okay. Great. Oh, we have a question from Piano Chen. Did they have bombs in the ship? Excellent question. Well, the Intrepid, being an aircraft carrier and being a warship, absolutely did have bombs on the ship. Now, many different kinds of bombs, 250-pound bombs all the way up to 1,000-pound bombs. Also had torpedoes for torpedo bombers, which we'll be seeing one in a few minutes. Also during the Vietnam War, the Vietnam era, and the Cold War, nuclear bombs as well. Okay, nuclear bombs on board. Okay, great questions, guys. We'll do some more questions later. Okay, guys, let's talk a little bit about this aircraft here. We'll go back to the hangar deck, and just like an airport's hangar, this is where aircraft are stored, worked on, right, and repaired. This is our Avenger. Guys, tell me in the chat, what are some of the things you notice about this aircraft here? It's one of our most popular aircraft at the museum, and it is, let me get you a better view of it, and it is one of my favorites, okay? Unfortunately, our only World War II era aircraft that we have on the ship as well. What do you guys notice? What's the colors maybe? Maybe you notice that something on the bottom of it. Maybe you notice the wings look broken, okay? Just any comments that you might see. Let's talk, one of the most common comments we get about the Avenger here is the color, okay? You can see 3 distinct colors. The color on the bottom there is white. And white coloration on an aircraft would mix in with what? What do you think? There you go. Fantastic. Okay, good job, Piano. If you are in a ship and this Avenger flies over you, particularly on a cloudy day, you're going to look up and you're going to see white, and that's going to kind of mix it in with the sky. Fantastic. I want you to imagine you're flying in another airplane right next to the Avenger. You're going to see this light blue color there. Okay, that also will tend to mix you in with the sky. And on top, you can see it a little bit better on the wings here, that dark blue color or navy blue, okay? That will mix in with what, do you think? What do you guys think that's going to mix in with? And where would you have to be to see that color while this Avenger was flying? If you are thinking that that is the color to mix in with the ocean, then you are right. So imagine yourself flying above the Avenger, and you look down and you see that dark color. That's going to mix in, okay? This is called counter shading, okay? It's a type of camouflage called counter shading. Excellent. Next question. I don't know if you're hearing that thunder. What's the crew? How many crew members you think were in this Avenger right here? How many crew members you think were in there? Obviously, it had a pilot, and that would be up on top in the glass cockpit there. And by the way, no ejection seats for that pilot to use should they get, should something happen to their aircraft, okay? No ejection seats. You'd have to just bail out manually, climb out and jump. So I'm going to give you a picture hint as to what one of the other jobs were. This had a crew of three aviators were in here. Look at that. Okay? Obviously, it looks like some kind of a gun, right? That's a gun turret. That would be behind the pilot in the cockpit. And so they'd have a gunner in there. Now, if it looks kind of small, it certainly was. You couldn't be too big of a guy to be able to fire that gun, okay? And that's going to protect the Avenger from incoming enemy aircraft as well, okay? It's a 50 caliber machine gun firing at about 600 rounds per minute. The third member of our crew in the Avenger was a radio operator navigator, and he's going to be sitting in the belly of the Avenger. And we have this kind of blueprint drawing of the Avenger just to show you kind of where he would be. So look at the gun turret. And down below the gun turret would be where the radio operator navigator would sit as well. Okay, so that is our Avenger. We're going to go from the hangar deck. We're going to go up to the flight deck because planes don't take off from the hangar deck. They go up to the flight deck, and how they get there, I want you to start thinking about that. But we're going to cover that in a little bit later. But in the chat, tell me what happens on the flight deck. A lot of things happen on the flight deck, but what are some of the things that happen on the flight deck? But some of the things you think these guys might be doing here? Yes, they have colorful shirts and helmets as well. That's all by design. We're going to be covering that too. What are some of the things that happen up on the flight deck? Guys, if you were thinking that aircraft get launched, absolutely they do on the flight deck. Here's a jet aircraft from the Cold War era. This particular aircraft being launched off the starboard side or the right side of the flight deck. Okay, this aircraft could be rather heavy, and I want you, as part of it being a floating airport, I want you to think of the Intrepid. Divide the flight deck in thirds. The front 1/3, okay, which is about 250 feet. That's where aircraft are launched from, only 250 feet. The back 1/3, also about 250 feet or so. That's where aircraft are going to land. In the middle is where they're going to be bringing up aircraft from down below. They're going to be doing refueling and working on the aircraft before they move them up to the 1/3, the first third, the front 1/3 of the bow of the Intrepid. So this heavy aircraft is going to need quite a bit of help to get off the deck of the Intrepid. And you might see behind it there, see that kind of line, looks like a little slot there in the flight deck. That is our steam-powered catapults. Now, guys, maybe if you're a little bit older too, when I say the word catapult, you're picturing it in your head. You might be picturing the medieval siege engine throwing a big boulder at a castle wall, trying to break it down. What I'm really talking about is a slingshot. Okay, if you can picture it more as a slingshot, right, kind of like this device. And if you have a slingshot, let us know as well. Hopefully you don't shoot anybody with it. And that is more in line with the operation of it. Okay, but guys, look at these guys that are here on the right side of the picture. There's people there, some of which are obviously going to go right under the wing as it takes off. What kind of jobs you think they might have? And if you need a little hint, look in the lower right-hand corner of that picture. If you see a gun, like I do, then that's a big hint on some of the jobs, okay? That would probably be a Marine crew that is down there by that gun, that anti-aircraft gun used to shoot down enemy aircraft that are coming in to attract the Intrepid. But what about these guys up here in the front, up near the front? If you look really closely, it's really hard to see, but you might see one with something that looks like a camera. Yes, photographers on board, another job that we had, another kind of common job on board as well. The Navy took pictures of everything, okay? And if you come to visit the Intrepid, you'll see one of our latest exhibits. It is called the photography exhibit, okay? So you can see the equipment that they used and some of the pictures that they took. Lucky, you'll see a former crew member that was a photographer's mate, and he'll be able to tell you firsthand what it was all about, okay? So that's the launching of our aircraft and other jobs that you may see in this picture. Okay. Here's a picture from World War II, okay, obviously. You see what are probably Marines there by the anti-aircraft guns. Look like a couple of 40mm anti-aircraft guns here. You see these prop planes taking off. It kinda, I can tell you that it's probably a Helldiver, dive bomber by the way the wings folded, okay? Could be a Hellcat fighter as well, and one is taking off. They rarely used catapults in World War II. And when they did, they were old, hydraulically powered catapults, nowhere near as powerful as our steam-driven catapults as well. Now that we've launched our aircraft, well, we need to land the aircraft too, okay? Look at this guy up here. This is a picture from the World War II era Intrepid. All right, let me give you a good view of that. What do you think that guy's doing? If anybody has an idea in the chat, put it down there. You see a guy looks like kind of has a radio headset on in the lower right-hand corner there. A couple of other guys there. What you don't see in the picture is there's a couple of flags that are part of this whole setup here. Okay. Last chance in the chat. 3, 2, 1. These are guys called LSO, landing signal operators. Okay. What these guys are doing is this guy specifically with the paddles that you see in each hand, he's signaling to an incoming pilot, and the guy on the radio is communicating with that pilot. Right? So as an incoming pilot, I want you to imagine yourself in World War II. So you're flying a prop plane, you're coming in, landing on the Intrepid. You're not exactly sure. It's a difficult enough thing to do if you have no help, but this guy's trying to help you. And he's going to tell you the bearing and the inclination of your aircraft, where your aircraft is and how it looks like you're coming in for a good landing, a safe landing, or if you need some help, if you have to make corrections. He's going to tell you all of that by using different landing signals, using those paddles. It looks here today, right in this picture, like it has his left arm is kind of raised a little bit. That would indicate that the pilot's right wing is elevated too much, okay? And so he needs to bring that down, all right? Very good. So that's the World War II era. Later we had the optical landing system. Look at this, okay? And notice, take note of the guy dressed in yellow once again. Again, we'll talk about that later. The picture in the left there I'm talking about, and you see that arrow, it's pointing to basically a mirror. And in the Vietnam era and the Cold War era, even before, to make it even better for pilots to get an idea of how they're coming in, and especially during nighttime operations, okay? You want to make sure that aircraft is going to come in safely. So the guy on the radio is going to radio to the pilot. He's going to say, call the ball. You see down there at the bottom, it says the meatball. The pilot is going to see, as you see in the right there, sorry, I can't blow it up anymore for you guys, but in that circle, he's going to see a red ball, okay? Meatball, meatballs are in maybe spaghetti and covered with sauce, so a meatball, right? If the ball is exactly level, then that tells the pilot he's coming in for a safe landing. If it's too high, okay, that means he's too low and needs to raise up. And of course, if the ball is too low, that means he's coming in too high, okay? Excellent. The optical landing system. Okay, let's say you're coming in for a great landing, and you got to do it safely. You only have 250 feet in which to do this. You're going to drop your tail hook. The picture in the left there, you see a A-4 Skyhawk Vietnam era aircraft coming in. The pilot has dropped his tail hook, and below him you can see those 3 cables outstretched there. Those are called arrestor cables. Okay, to get a little bit of a closer look as a tail hook, you'll see in the picture on the right there, that's a tail hook for our A6 Intruder. You're going to you're going to throttle up to full power. You're going to plop down on the aft or the back of the flight deck in hopes of grabbing onto the cable. Okay, in the picture on the right there, you can see that safe landing right there. Now you're saying you're landing at full speed, at full power. You have only 3 cables to grab on. What's the chances you're going to miss that? Believe it or not, there's not such a great chance. Just with any other job in the Navy, it requires extensive training, especially so if you are an aviator, okay, a pilot and otherwise. So, and if you saw the 3, it is considered a badge of honor if you can pick with your landing hook the middle cable, okay, the middle cable. It's considered a test of skill. So that is, oh, and by the way, but things do happen, and you may indeed miss any of those arrestor cables. If that happens, remember, you are throttled up to full power. You will have enough room on your angled flight deck. If you remember some of the views on the Intrepid, it's from the Cold War and the Vietnam War. You had this kind of area of the flight deck that was angled off to a side. You will have room. Hopefully nobody will be in front of you. You'll be able to take off again, come back around and try that landing again. They call you a bolter, and you will have bolted that landing. Okay, so that is landing our aircraft. If you've done it successfully, that is your arrested landing. Let's talk about other flight deck jobs, or specifically in this picture here, what you're looking at in the picture on the left is the island. If you picture the flight deck as an ocean, islands come out of the ocean, right? So there you have the island, and it's very, very important structure. It's kind of where the command and control functions of a ship are, and there are many jobs in there. Right? But before we go there, I want to ask you this question. Do you think, and tell me in the chat, do you think that the flight deck of an aircraft carrier is a safe place to work, or can it be a little dangerous? What do you think in the chat? If you look at the picture on the right here, it may give you a little clue as to what the actual answer to that is. I will tell you that there was still the same warnings written on the, yes, very good, Nazareth Beastman. Okay, I love it. Yes, very good. Good job. You get the gold star. Now, it was different in World War II because it said, beware of props, jet intakes, and jet blasts. Okay, no helicopters yet. As you see here, it says rotors. No helicopters yet in World War II. In World War II, if you worked on, or in any era, if you worked on the flight deck, you were always in danger of walking into a prop that was spinning. If you remember the picture of the Avenger, you'll see the tips of the propeller were painted yellow. Some you'll see white. Some you'll see white stripes printed on the propeller, and that's because when it's spinning, you can see it better. Okay. If you have a jet aircraft, if you walk too closely to the jet intake, jet engines suck in a large amount of air. You might have that to deal with. And of course, if you are right behind a jet when it's taking off, when it throttles up, well, enough said. Okay, so yes, a dangerous place to work indeed. But again, it's lots of training, lots of training. Let's take a look at the type of jobs you'll find in the island. The CIC, or the Combat Information Center, think of it as like the brain of a ship, okay, especially on a bigger ship like the Intrepid. Here is where you will find jobs like the radar men that are combing the skies and the oceans around the Intrepid, looking for targets and looking for hostile enemies. What other kind of enemies are there? You're looking for hostile targets. Here you'll find cryptography, which is the guys who are good at code breaking, okay, and they're going to try to break the enemy's codes, okay, things like that. Here, so in the island, you'll find the navigation room. Very important to know where you're going. Very important to know where you are. Now, today, the Navy uses redundant systems, GPS systems, but they also have some antiquated systems too, like dead reckoning tracers, sea charts, sextants even, okay, because the Navy is all about redundancy. So backup systems and backup systems. So here you'll find some of the navigators working on exactly where the Intrepid is and where the captain has commanded you should go. The navigator station, however, is a little bit different than the navigation room. If you check this out, this is how it looks today. Back in World War II, all this glass, these windows that you see here, that wasn't there. That was open to the elements. And that chair, this is open to the public and people can sit on that chair, but that chair was a lot more comfortable than it is today. It's just a wooden chair. That's where the navigator would be. In front of the navigator, it's a little hard to tell, is one of our main compasses. Okay, there were two main master compasses on board. And of course, the navigator would have access to one of those. All other compasses on board were feeder compasses feeding off of those. This is the only place on the starboard side of the ship, or the right side of the ship, that you can see from bow to stern. And the navigator would be able to easily see any obstructions coming up that might be in the way of the Intrepid. And there were lookouts, another job. there were lookouts on the island as well, with binoculars looking at what's coming up ahead. So it was safe for them to do. Guys, that brings us to the pilot house. I might have just given it away with the name. What do you think happens here in this room? Tell me in the chat what do you think's going on there in that room. You can see a big wheel there, a lot of equipment there. You can see that chair that you're seeing there on the left. That wasn't there. That's just for the people who are working in the museum today to have a seat and be a little comfortable in. So piano, the glass wasn't bomb-proof, wasn't at all. If you remember what was behind the glass, that was armored. Okay, the wall of the island was armored. Okay, so against being strafed by bullet fire or cannon fire, so that was armored. Okay, very good, Nazareth. The steering of the ship, that happened right here. This is where the helmsman would be, in front of that wheel, steering the ship. Okay. Oh, and by the way, if you are up in the pilot house here, up on the island, and you hear a command given by the officer of the deck, it's the guy who's in command at the time in this area. If you hear a command that contains the words left or right rudder, that is a command specifically for the helmsman. Any other order will be given in starboard or port directions. Okay, a little trivia there for you. There'd also be a lee helmsman standing right next to the right here in the picture of the helmsman, and he's working the device there that you see. That is sending a signal directly to the engine room, telling them what kind of speed and direction that you want for the ship as well. Hey, great job, guys, great job. But where's the captain, you say? Well, the captain, first of all, the captain's the captain. He can be anywhere he wants. The captain most likely will be located right here in this very, very comfortable chair. This is right outside of the pilot house of the room that you just saw. Again, in World War II, these glass windows would not be there, would be open to the elements. So on bad days, chances are bad weather days, chances are the captain would not be sitting out there. If you can look closely to kind of the upper left from the chair, you can see what looks like a big mirror, kind of like a side view mirror for the, so you can see what's going on the rear portions of the flight deck as well. Okay, so those are our jobs up in the island. We talked a little bit about how aircraft got from the hangar deck up to the flight deck. Well, how do people get from floor to floor on a building? They may walk upstairs, but aircraft are not going to walk upstairs. They may take elevators, and that's exactly what we're going to do on a ship. We're going to take those planes from the hangar deck to the left side of the picture there. You might see some doors that look like a gated, that might come up and down like a gated doorway. That's the hangar deck there. The planes would be towed out by someone wearing a specific color of jersey onto the elevator. Up goes the elevator, taking only about 7 seconds, and you get to the flight deck, and that aircraft would be towed into place to get ready to be launched off of Intrepid. So guys, a lot of the jobs, some of the jobs on the flight deck would not be certainly as glorious as you may think, may not be requires as much training like swabbing the deck. Okay, it's very important to keep things clean on a ship, and that includes the flight deck. You see crew members here with all different colored jerseys on. It was all of their jobs to keep that deck clean. All right. I think it's probably a good chance here to see if we have any more questions. Do we have any more questions? Oh, we have a question there. Was one person in charge of the steering all the time? No, you'll have several helmsmen. Standard naval duty shifts are 4-hour shifts. So you'd be on for 4 hours. When you're finished, another helmsman would come over and take over for you. So you didn't have to stand there for more than 4 hours. Some of us would get 4 hours a long time to just stand there anyway. Good question, though. Good question. So no, there'd be several helmsmen on board. Here's another. How fast can the Intrepid travel? Okay, so the lee helmsman is going to be signaling down to the engine room. Okay, perhaps they'll signal down full speed ahead. Full speed of the Intrepid was 32 knots. Knots is a measure of travel over water. 1 knot is equivalent to about 1.15 miles per hour, okay? The full speed, the fastest speed the Intrepid could go, 32 knots once again, quite fast for the days. And by the way, today, even though the aircraft carriers are bigger and wider than the Intrepid, that the Essex class were, even though aircraft carriers are nuclear powered with not 1, but 2 nuclear reactors, even though they weigh sometimes up to 3 times as heavy as the Intrepid, they still go 32 knots, okay? That'll either surprise you or not, considering the weight involved as well. Good job, guys, good job. We're gonna go to one other area. Ooh, check out these guys. Let's go back to the hangar deck just for this picture here. I believe these guys are working on the Avenger. These guys here, another job on board aircraft carriers. And they are maintaining, perhaps even repairing. I don't see much damage to that Avenger though. So they're probably maintaining, changing oil, swapping out worn parts, things like that. There's one guy there maybe working on the wing there, you see to the right. One guy seems to be working on the rotary engine. One guy's right up on the propeller. And by the way, you can see the tips of that propeller painted is what I was talking about. It makes it easier to see when you were spinning. Okay, so you'll have mechanics, you'll have avionics techs up here who are working on the instruments inside the cockpit. You'll have electronics techs as well. All these, again, other jobs. And in your neighborhood, you may have an auto body shop or an auto repair shop where you'll have mechanics working on your cars. Right? Let's go to this area up here, guys. The interior forward section of the Intrepid is called the forecastle. This is a contraction of the word forecastle. Back in the medieval days, the big wooden sailing ships would often have a structure built on the bow called a forecastle. Fore means in the front. And it would often have parapets that would look like it belonged on the top of a castle. And archers would run up there and fire arrows at enemy ships. This has been more or less brought forward in military tradition to modern day, so that the interiors of warships still referred to as the forecastle, but we contract it to be forecastle. Okay. Tell me real quick, guys, in the chat, what do you see about this room? Anything going on here? Okay, Joseph, yeah, thanks for sharing. A lot of 4-hour watches at the helm. Fantastic. Great memories. Joseph, I believe, are you saying that you were a former Intrepid crew member? Let us know in the chat, yes or no. And the rest of you, let us know what you think this room was all about. If Joseph was in the Navy, he probably spent some time, at least in this room here, a little bit. If you guys think that these chains belonged to something, a part of the anchor and anchor chain duty, you got it right. This is where the anchors were lowered, were weighed, and were brought back on board the ship. Okay, that's what happened in here, the anchor chain room. Let's take a look a little bit at how you drop the anchor. See these guys here? That's exactly what their duty is. And by the way, on board Intrepid, in the forecastle, one quick step back there, you can see it's enclosed on these sides here. It's enclosed on all 4 sides, although you can't see all 4 of them. But in the World War II era Intrepid, it was open to the elements as well. And again, saving weight was the deal here. Saving weight, as well as the absence of windows up on the island as well. So you can imagine working in here and the wind whipping through. You can imagine the waves splashing through here as well. Okay. This guy with the sledgehammer is going to slam into something called a pelican hook. Let me zoom in a little bit here for you. The pelican hook is on the chain on the top there. That's going to open up. And the stopper chains that you see here alongside it to the left, okay, keeping the chain on there, that pelican hook is going to release that stopper chain, and just gravity is going to take that anchor out, dragging that chain out. And if you've ever been to the Intrepid, you'll notice, and if you do go to the Intrepid, make sure you don't forget to take a look at the anchors that are on the bow of the Intrepid still. Okay. Speaking of anchors and speaking of jobs, how'd you like to have that job? What do you think those guys are doing up there? Now, guys, if you're familiar with any kind of ships or boats of anything, any kind of size, you'll know that anything that goes in the water eventually it gets all kinds of stuff on it. Okay, you might bring up seaweed, you might bring up mussels that attach themselves to the bottom of the ship, the bottom and your anchor as well. There might be some corrosion. So these guys up here, by the way, about 60 feet or so off the surface of the water, depending on what's going on, what the ship is doing. So you can't be afraid of heights and do this job. They're scraping. You see the guy in the upper left-hand corner there is scraping the anchor, and you can see the guy on the right there. It looks like he has a can of paint. So that's what they're doing. They're painting these things. Real quick, how much do you think those anchors weighed? I know they probably look heavy. Painted battleship gray, by the way. These anchors. Yep, they're cleaning and painting, absolutely. Guys, these anchors weighed 15 tons. 15 tons, 30,000 pounds of anchor. There were two of them on the Intrepid. So 60,000 pounds of anchor. The anchors were not used often, but when they were, that seems like a lot of weight to keep the ship in place. But if you compare 60,000 pounds or 30 tons of anchor to the overall weight of the ship, 42,000 tons, doesn't seem so heavy anymore. Right? And real quick, I wanted to get you to see this back in the anchor chain room. Look what we have here. See in the bottom left-hand corner? Roadrunner. Anybody a fan of Looney Tune cartoons? And also in the upper right-hand corner, you can see that anchor there. This is crew member artwork, okay, that we've preserved here for any visitors to the museum to take a look at and to see. All right. So there was some downtime on the Intrepid as well. Okay, so guys, back in the forecastle. Oh, my favorite job on board. Well, one of the jobs of sailors is to eat. And if anybody knows how to do that, it is certainly me. So this is a very important part of a sailor's life. You may have heard the expression, an army marches on its stomach. Well, a sailor sails on its stomach as well. And of course, making the food, one of the jobs on Intrepid. Look at this. This is the galley. The galley is a naval term for a kitchen. Here's where the cooking is going to happen. So here's where your cooks are going to be working hard to feed that crew of 3,400. They're also going to feed the air group. They're also going to feed the Marines on board as well. Officers often would sit in a different room. So officers' rank has its privileges. So you might have a steward that is going to serve you dinner, another job on Intrepid, kind of like a waiter, okay? You can check out the really tremendously large mixer in the back, large boiling pots here, pans, large utensils. Okay, there were two fully stocked galleys here on Intrepid. For these guys, the cooks. Look at the guy on the left here. The guy on the left looks like pork chops to me. And I hope if you haven't had dinner yet, you might be getting hungry. When I start to talk about food, chances are I'm going to get a little bit of hunger pang in my stomach. The guy on the right there is probably restocking the chow line, what they called it in the Navy, the chow line as well. Guys, my absolute favorite, if you are like me, you are in love with the smell of freshly baked bread. Okay, look at these buns here. And bakers, we did have another job on board of the Intrepid, okay? Just imagine cooking for 3,400 men. Just imagine baking for 3,400 men. And again, more than that if you include the air groups. It's one of my favorite smells, smelling freshly baked bread. But imagine baking 700 loaves of bread every day, right? Guys, during the Cold War, I mentioned the space race really quickly, the Gemini 3 mission. The Intrepid was the recovery vessel for that mission, picking up astronauts Gus Grissom and John Young. You can see them respectively here from left to right. That was a big day on board Intrepid. They came on board. On the right picture there, you can see the Intrepid retrieving the capsule, the Gemini 3 capsule as well. Very momentous day. And how do you celebrate momentous occasions? You bake cakes. You probably don't bake cakes like this, though. You can see Gus Grissom in the foreground, John Young in the background, cutting that cake using some naval officers' ceremonial swords as well. Cakes, a big part of life on board Intrepid. This is their first anniversary cake. This cake weighed 700 pounds. They had to use the bomb elevator to bring it up and down with. This is actually a bunch of smaller cakes put together because you can't move around a cake of that size. Not even every crew member got a slice of the cake, I'm told. Using recipes like this, the bakers did. This is easy chocolate cake. Guys, I don't know if you are a baker, if you like to bake as a hobby, but if you're anything like me, there's nothing easy about this, okay? There's nothing easy. This is only for 100 people, right? And you might notice in this recipe here, no eggs, no milk. Those of you out there who are vegans, it's actually a vegan cake, okay? You wanted materials that didn't go bad easily and that could last for a long time. So eggs and milk tend to spoil, especially that milk as well. Again, the first anniversary cake right there, 700 pounds. Guys, it's time for a little bit of a quiz. It's the last thing we're going to do here for today. Talking about all the different colored shirts, vests, and helmets we had on the flight deck, all those colors that you saw there swabbing the deck called Skittles, okay? Tell me which color was in charge of prepping a plane for flight. Which color was in charge of prepping an aircraft for flight? Was it A or B? Just write down there in the chat. Yes, I love cake as well. Piano. Put it down there in the chat. These guys are actually in charge of a plane, of a specific plane. If you said A, that would be the correct answer. Okay, plane captains wearing brown jerseys. Doesn't look, it may look a little bit more reddish here, but he's wearing an actual brown shirt. He's in charge of that plane from top to bottom. Plane captains wear the brown. Very good. Which color is in charge of refueling, A or B? A or B? This one I think is a little bit easier. A or B? See some red shirts there on the left, purple shirts on the right. That guy in purple, also known as grapes, for obvious reasons. If you said B, that is correct. Okay, the purple shirts were in charge of refueling the aircraft, also going to be driving around the tankers on the deck, on the flight deck as well. Okay. Third question, which is in charge of the catapults and the arresting gear? A or B? It's either the blue shirts or the green shirts. Which ones were in charge of the arresting gear and the catapult? So basically launching and landing those aircraft. A or B? If you said B, you would be correct. That's the green shirts. Okay, the blue shirts are going to be elevator operators, and they're going to be in charge of towing those aircraft up on the elevator and away from the elevator as well. We have one last question, guys. Which is an aircraft handling officer? Which is an aircraft handling officer? You see on the right there in yellow, we saw a lot of yellow shirts throughout this presentation and guys in white there. Which is an aircraft handling officer. A little clue may be given by what he's doing with his hands there. If you guys said A, you would be absolutely correct. The yellow shirts are plane directors. They're going to be chocking the wheels, make sure the planes don't move. They're going to be in charge of guiding the plane so the pilots know exactly where they're going. Okay, and that is our quiz, guys. I hope you did well on that. Okay, looks like you probably did. Okay, thank you guys for participating in this presentation. If you are interested in knowing what we have coming up next, just simply click on one of the links in the chat. You'll see our full schedule of programs, guys. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time on Intrepid Adventures. Bye, guys. Have a good time.